Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody to our December annual meeting and our monthly learning collaborative, which today is about building wow, I can't talk, building resiliency. Holy wow. Sorry about that, everybody. As you know, we are the Rural Community Health Worker Network. We are a peer-to-peer network for CHWs built by CHWs. I would like to start out by giving you guys some reminders, updates, and answering any questions you have as far as RCHWN. Our CHW store is live. We do have a lot of new merchandise in the store right now. We did some redesigns of different logos and different ideas that celebrate CHWs. If you get a chance, go to the website, rchwn.org, and check it out. We are ramping up our annual conference and retreat. It is being held in partnership with Mobile County Health Department. So it is going to be in Gulf Shores, Alabama this year from April 13th to the 15th. We do have early bird ticket prices on right now for $50, and as of January 1st, that promotion will be done and they will be $100. As always, our 2023 membership campaign is open. If you refer a colleague or a CHW friend and you let me know that you referred them, I will send you out a special surprise from RCHWN. As for our 2023 Learning Collaboratives, we did send out a survey to all of our members asking what you guys would like to see this year. We had some great responses. And at this time, I believe we have one spot still open, possibly two. If you have a topic you're interested in or you would like to present on something that you're an expert in and would like to share your CHW story, please, by all means, reach out to me at rebecca@rchwn.org. Today is our 12th Learning Collaborative of 2022 before we ring in the new year of 2023. And I would like to welcome our presenter, speaker, and member, Andrea Kratzer-Burton, to talk about building resiliency. It's all you, Andrea.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca, for that wonderful introduction and those beautiful updates. I have had the opportunity to visit Gulf Shores, Alabama, and it is a spectacular area. So that is going to definitely be a good time. So today we're going to be talking about resiliency and how do we really build resiliency? And we're going to take that into a little bit of a deeper level. Next slide, please. So really how to overcome your hurts, hangups, and habits. Because resiliency is really about overcoming those three areas, both with ourself and our client. And as a CHW, right, we all have those lived experiences that help us to be the expert in our field. Next slide, please. So, of course, a little bit about our team. There's, of course, Shannon, myself, Kyle, I'm sure you've met him before. We have Ashley as well as Wendy out of Indiana, Elvita, is that Velveeta? Elfrida, sorry about that. Dexter Drake, she is also a CHW trainer. Andrea Foster is in the arena of diversity, equity, inclusion, and more specifically in the LGBTQ plus community. We have Sarah Kyle, who is a part of 211 and also a Bridges Out of Poverty expert. We also have Lenny Avery, who is a trainer for CHWs, as well as a master CHW himself. We have Kevin Faust, who is in Recovery Service Program. He does a lot with peer coaching and peer recovery. And then Vanessa is our intern, and she is located in Florida. Next slide, please. So I think you all know a bit of our story, or you're all very familiar with the story of Everyday Life Consulting. So I'm not going to necessarily read this slide verbatim, but just knowing that we are in the arena of helping CHWs tell their story, elevate the work of CHWs so we can build capacity and have a good, sustainable income resource versus just grant options. I am one of the national CHW leaders, as well as Shannon is on the national board for CHWs at this moment in time. And we are working very, very hard at making sure that we are bringing change to the CHW workforce. Next slide, please. Shannon will not be with us today. She is skiing with her children. Next slide, please. And you know me. I'm a teacher, mentor, and master CHW. I have been working as a CHW currently for over actually 25 years now. And I am nationally known as a CHW master trainer. And I have been, as I stated earlier, prior to the delivery of this content or presentation, I've been traveling all over the United States. And I have went everywhere from the Panhandle in Florida, all the way to Los Angeles, California, and everywhere in between, doing this work and trying to, again, elevate CHWs. Next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about the definition of resilience. How does the thesaurus or the Oxford Dictionary define resilience? But then how do we define resilience as a CHW? We're going to also talk about some examples of resiliency, important skill building, Dr. Ginsburg's 7 C's, or his model of the 7 C's of building resiliency, and really how do we overcome our own hurts, habits, and hangups. And when we're working with clients on resiliency and learning their story and really, digging deeper into the things that they're going through and facing, sometimes that can start to bring up those hurts, habits, and hangups once again, right? That we thought we had probably suppressed or healed from. And that really is those empathy pieces. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Next slide, please. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, the definition is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, the remarkable resilience of so many institutions, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity. Nylon is excellent in wearability and resilience. Wondering how many of you feel like a nylon? Truthfully. Stretch, go back, stretch, go back. You're constantly having to build new strategies, right? Especially when I'm working with clients, and I recently had a client that I've been working with by helping out the RCHWN as a CHW, and I working with this client, and without divulging too much information, she seemed to be pretty resilient. She is a mother to an individual child who is not quite 2. He was diagnosed with dysopenia, which is a juvenile Parkinson's disease. They never recover from it, so he will have Parkinson's, throughout his entire life. She's had to take him to many appointments, things of this nature. She's learned how to go from a working mother to now being an at-home mother with a child. She's built these strategies and these pieces to become, which seem to me in conversation resilient. But talking to her, the more and more we talk about certain things, she really doesn't have those resiliency pieces because she doesn't have a strategy. She doesn't have a support system. She doesn't really understand her internal strengths or her internal weaknesses even. So those are the types of things that so I've been taking on the role of trying to find her viable housing. And the more I try to help her with viable housing, she seems to want to close the door in my face because she doesn't, for one reason or another, some of these things just aren't working. So just when I think that we've made headway and the nylon goes back to its normal form, things get stretched and muted and manipulated out of sorts because, again, there's tension. There's this piece where she's actually like resistant to change or resistant to move forward into making these things, these necessary changes that she needs to, because she can't see the future outcome. She can only see the moments that are right in front of her nose, which is really difficult. So I've had to think outside the box lately. Next slide, please. So the true CHW meaning of resilience, as far as we are concerned, is defined by most as the ability to recover from setbacks, adapt well to change, and keep going in the face of adversity. These are the things that we're working with our clients and with ourselves on a daily basis. This is what resilience means to us. Next slide, please. So examples of resilience or building resiliency: having a good support system, having proper resources that are going to work for the client, but also resources to help the client understand the need to work with some of these resources. I also had her, this same client say, well, yeah, I'm really interested in that resource. That would be great. Definitely. I would love to have that connection. Oh, but it's with the community action agency. I really don't want to work with that person or those people. Sometimes we have to overcome those things because that resource is the provider of the resource is that particular organization, right? So being able to have those proper resources, but willing to work with those as well. And of course, building confidence. So that's done obviously through our goal setting, right? When we set proper goals with our clients, they're able to achieve those goals. They're building that confidence. So those goals that we set are usually of the SMART criteria. However, as a CHW, the more you get to know your clients and community members that you're working with, or even your coworkers, sometimes if you're a supervisor, we're setting goals that are meaningful, and we're setting them in a way that works for everyone. So it doesn't necessarily always have to fit the SMART criteria, but just making sure that we're setting goals that are achievable, because that's where we're going to build that confidence, which ultimately helps us build that resiliency. Being able to maintain those positive relationships, very important. Doing what we can to help overcome some of those tough conversations or those conflict pieces that we have with our clients, right? Or even each other, right? Because we want to help them understand that those positive support systems, those positive relationships are super important, because you're not always available 24/7. Next slide, please. So why it's important for skill building? Well, promote self-care, building self-awareness, having a purpose, stronger self-esteem, and mindfulness on the real situation. These are really important because we have to understand that oftentimes we get wrapped up, Rita was saying earlier with one of the CHWs, just got tired. She just got really tired and worn out and just felt like she needed to exit the career field. Well, we all know that if we don't take time for that self-care, and really building that awareness of when we need that and how often we need that and what that looks like, those types of things, we're not going to be resilient ourselves. We're going to be broken down, and we're going to be worn out, and we're going to suffer from that burnout. So making sure that we are doing constant skill building and having that in our forefront, because again, we can get burnout very quickly. Next slide, please. So Dr. Ginsburg's 7 C's are build competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. I'd like to open it up to the group and have you unmute if you would like to talk, or you can put it in the chat. How do you see Dr. Ginsburg's 7 C's working, or do you use a specific one or more of the C's that are listed here in your day-to-day work?
Well, I think that having the competence is, well, attending these webinars. They can help you or give you coping skills to be able to work with your patients or clients. And by that, also, it helps your self-esteem. And also with that, you contribute to this person's needs. I don't know if
Yeah, and that's a really important piece, because here's the thing. Oftentimes we can lose confidence ourselves in our ability to be the CHW that we need to be when we work with these difficult clients that are resistant against what we're doing with them and for them. So like if they don't meet a goal, oftentimes we question our ability, or sometimes whether or not we've done our job effectively. So that can break down our confidence as well. And really, competency is really important, because we need to build confidence within the patient, or their client, so they understand that they have the competence levels to be able to perform those tasks or reach those goals, right? Because they have that awareness. Confidence is important because when we think about confidence, I know that like when I get up in the morning and let's say you feel very confident about something and you can approach a task with confidence, right? You're going to perform much better. It's going to be a much better performance, and you're going to feel more excited to be able to do it when you're confident. So the connection piece is really making sure that we're connecting all of the moving parts and making sure they're connected like a well-oiled wheel, right? Or well-oiled machine. And we need to make sure that the connection is there. And so that's done with those warm handoffs. We don't just typically give a number to a client and say, call the food pantry and, they'll get you connected. We'll call the food pantry, make those connections, and then connect the client to that appointment, right? So those connections are important to building resiliency. And of course, character. How do you think character affects building resiliency? Negatively or positively? Well, part of your character is your attitude, right? And so let's say that part of your character is um, wanting everyone else to do it for you, not really thinking that you have to put skin in the game. Character really is an important piece here, because it not only is your character a part of helping you build resiliency and taking on these pieces, but also it helps build a positive character. It helps change, right? Because what we're doing ultimately is doing those stages of change. So it helps change your characteristics, or change your character as an individual to look and feel and approach things differently. And then, of course, contribution. The individuals that we work with need to have equal contribution, if not more, right? This is their story. This is their situation. They need to be a contributor to the resiliency and building that resiliency. What about coping? Does anyone see how this resonates with resiliency?
I think how we, or people in general, react and respond to, challenges and setbacks and opportunities, and just anything and everything that, we encounter during the course of a day. How we react and respond to that has a lot to do with, our character, whether we're, moving in the direction that we want to be moving or getting away from that. I think it plays a role in our confidence for sure, in building connections or breaking down connections with other people, which I think are really, really valuable. I can't be the Lone Ranger out here, doing this on my own. Excuse me, not feeling well today, which is why I'm home. But how we cope with the internal and external things that occur, on a regular basis, have a lot to do with everything, or almost everything, in my opinion, to do with, what's going to happen from the point where we have the opportunity to make a decision about how to react and respond to things, moving forward. That made sense in my head. It didn't make sense coming out of my mouth, though.
Well, it does make sense, because how we cope with all of this is a true testament as to whether we're going to be able to build resiliency or not, right? If we cope with a disruption in our life, let's say a trauma, let's say what have you, and we're coping with only negative coping mechanisms, right? It's just going to get worse. If we are coping and being open to and willing to use and have positive coping mechanisms, or have more positive strategies in way in which we cope, right? Those things are big factors that play a role in resiliency, how we cope with something. And when we cope negatively, then what happens? Patricia.
I'd just like to add that coping to me goes hand in hand with having patience. You can let a situation overtake you, or you can overtake the situation. And being able to handle things is a part of coping with things, is being able to handle things in a positive way, so that the outcomes are positive as well.
That is exactly it. So I can choose to take coping with a situation to a level of utilizing, say, a negative substance, which is a coping mechanism for some. And we see where that oftentimes that behavior is negative and destructive behavior. So it can turn into other negative or long-term negativities in one's life. And then what happens is you then lose more control, right? You're not a positive contribution to the situation, or to your family, or to your community or society. It helps build a negative character. It helps break connections, right? So we see how all of these things essentially are like a well-oiled machine working in conjunction with each other, and all of these C's make a huge difference and have a great impact on whether or not we're building resiliency or we're not able to build resiliency. We can see where if we have even a barrier or a gap in any of these areas, we essentially are struggling more at building that resiliency and long term, right? And then, of course, control. Sometimes we have to understand that we have to just relinquish control and take the advice of others, or have others help us. It's okay to admit our faults or our ill pieces of control, right? I don't have to control everything. I'm not the expert at everything. And if I can lessen my load by having my CHW or other folks that are my support system have a little bit of control over some of those pieces, then I'm going to be better off, right? But also we can look at it from a perspective of losing control. Have you ever seen a client lose control? Or I'm sure they feel like they're losing control with most of their negative situations, but have you ever seen a client physically or mentally lose control? And like, what did that maybe look like?
Anger, losing control, most anger sometimes, many times. And it's hard to actually see the big picture when you're angry. and you wind up doing things that are contrary to making your situation better.
Yeah, so when we lose control, right, we feel like we don't, a lot of times people just really feel like they don't understand where to start, where to end, what to do, how to get going. Sometimes it can come out in anger, sometimes it can come out in distraction, but then what can we do as a CHW to help our clients feel like they're in control, right? We can keep it client-centered and we help them feel like they have a very strong voice and that they can keep their decision-making at the forefront along with the CHW. So that way they understand by keeping control and making those decisions in an appropriate manner with the CHW, then they're going to build that confidence, that resiliency, and all of those pieces are going to play a huge role in those more positive outcomes. So I do like Dr. Ginsburg's 7 C's, and of course he goes into more of a in depth with that, but it's a model that I've really started to look into and really start to contribute to because as a CHW, we understand the basics of resiliency through our competency class. We know that we've done things in our lives to build some resiliency and to overcome some of those traumas. But this goes into a deeper level to see how these areas really matter and when you take an in-depth approach. So I encourage you to really kind of look those up if you have time ever and to look at what that is on more of a deeper level. Next slide, please. So hurts, habits, and hangups. How many of you have hurts, habits, and hangups? Just Alizar and myself?
I do.
Yeah, we all have hurts, habits, and hangups. Now think about how, as a CHW, through our training, through our support systems, or what, how have you overcome your hurts, habits, and hangups? So you can throw it in the chat, maybe unmute yourself, say one thing that has helped you yourself overcome a hurt, a habit, or a hangup.
One thing
I
that's
think for
helped me
me,
is recognizing hurts, habits, and hangups.
Yeah.
Once yeah.
recognition of the fact that they exist. I think having someone from an outside perspective looking in be able to say, hey, I can see that you're hurt by this. This has become habit forming. This is a hang up that you have with X, Y, and Z. And being able to be open to that conversation or being open to having someone tell you that and not just shut them out, right? I think we have to recognize what those hurts, habits, and hangups are. Accepted help. Yeah, we have to accept help with those hurts, habits, and hangups. Face and address them. We definitely need to face and address them. And I'd like to expand on that. How do we face them? How do we face them when sometimes they're embarrassing? Sometimes they're tough. Sometimes it's easier for, as a human, it's human nature to want to like brush it under the rug and avoid it. Let's see. We adapt and try to overcome. Yep. Give them value so you know they are worthy of the time and you need to take to work on them. That's a good one. Give them value. Maybe that's what you do. You make a list and then you value them according to 1 in 5, right? And when you do that or put a value on it, like this is important as my child, or this is important for this. Put a value on it so that way we can overcome them and manage them much easier. acknowledge them and how they impact us. Yeah. Sometimes it's having those conversations within yourself and making those lists and looking at them look at how they might affect others too. That's exactly it. How is it affecting your family, friendships, right? How is it holding you back from being 100%? Are you allowing your hurts, habits, and hangups to control your resiliency or to control you and what you're able to accomplish as a CHW? And it's important as the CHW, as always, because we do have that vast lived experience, to then share that with your clients and say, we all have hurts, hangups, and habits. How are you dealing with your hurts, habits, and hangups, right? Put yourself in their shoes. Yes, put yourself in their shoes. Explain to them, I've been there, I've done that. This is a no judgment zone, right? So when we overcome our own hurts, habits, and hangups, we're able to we try to look how far we've come. That's very important to recognize how far we have come and the things that we're going to, or the things that we need to work on. And it's okay to have areas that we are not the best at, or areas that we need to work on. Because it's really difficult as an individual who really mentors other people, because you really are a very huge, play a big role in the life of your clients and patients, when you're not really willing to do some of those things yourself, right? So obviously, when we think about from a client's perspective, they work closely with us as a CHW. And we give them space, and we give them a safe place to talk about their story. I know that in my head, when I think about things that I've done, or I think of some of my hurts, habits, and hangups, in my head, they don't quite seem maybe as bad, or I can embellish a little bit. But if someone were to ask me and I was very truthfully telling my story verbally, that sometimes can come across as being a little bit more impactful, because now I'm really hearing it, right? And I'm telling someone else who can give me feedback on those types of things. So just be aware of that as well. And I think being open to resources and different types of resources. Because we all know that when we get to those root causes, that's where we really start to understand how deep-seated some of those things are. And then build skills to ensure hardships. How do we help a client build skills to endure those hardships? Because they're not going to go away most generally. They're going to happen again. But what we do with that makes it makes all the difference. So how do we help them? How do we help clients skill build to endure those hardships, to adapt, overcome, and manage them? How do we do that? Or how do you do that? Do we set goals with our clients? Strength-based approach? Yeah, ask the client questions. Keep them at the center. Ask them what works for them.
Find out from them why it's important, to them, if it is, to, continue to get through things as things come up. Why is this important to you, rather, to press on rather than tapping out. Maybe it affects other people, maybe there are other reasons, probably there are, that it's important for people to try to keep their feet moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So an example of the hangups would be as well, I have a story to just reinforce that piece. Like there was a client who 8 months pregnant, homeless, living in her car, due to have a baby in the next, 4 weeks or so. And every time you'd go to bridge a conversation with her to talk about, managing her housing situation and getting her into a shelter, getting her into more sustainable housing and that kind of thing, she would shut it down and she would really get very upset about talking about it and things. So when you step back and we were able to say, okay, so if this isn't as important to you, what is important to you right now? She wanted a diaper bag. She didn't want to talk about anything else at the time. She wanted to talk about a diaper bag, getting a diaper bag full of all things she needed to be, to take care of this baby, because that to her is what a good mother had, was a good diaper bag full of all the right stuff. And then we could talk about and move forward. So she was hung up on the fact that she was going to be delivering a baby, not that she was going to potentially be, not able to bring the baby home because her home was a car, right? About the diaper bag. She needed to have a diaper bag when she went to the hospital, X, Y, and Z. So these things were important to her. So we had to overcome our hangups as well by thinking that she needed to talk about housing, because we know Maslow's tells us, right? We had to let her overcome that a little bit, have that conversation, get her the things that she needed so we could then move forward. So again, just really paying attention with that big eye, big ear, small mouth model as well. Empower them, short-term goals, long-term sustainable results, baby steps towards the longer journey. Plan what to do for when it or if it is to happen. Yeah. Excuse me. So we know that a lot of times this behavior is a pattern or a lifestyle of for individuals of how they live, right? This is just a lifestyle. This is these are the things that they've developed. Again, these habits, right? So we help them overcome those habits and make those changes by helping them do those long-term things to build those long sustainable goals. And so that's always very important. So again, understanding our own hurts, habits, and hangups, and that they exist and how we need to work through some of those, but also making sure that we understand and recognize that each of our clients have hurts, hangups, and habits, and that we need to help them build skills to endure those hardships and to adapt, overcome, and manage them more effectively, to build that resiliency and that sustainability for long-term health and well-being. Next slide, please. So final thoughts. How do you build and maintain resiliency? How do you help your clients do so? And who or what helped you get over your hurts, hangups, and habits? I'd really like to know some of the influencers that have played a role for you as a CHW. How have you really been able to build and maintain that resiliency? Who has helped you do so? And again, you can share it in the chat, open up, we can open the floor up for open discussion.
My children have been a big influence on my resiliency. Um, family, period. And my spiritual mentors also. Um, those times when you see people who are down and out and don't seem to be any way out, even for myself, when I find myself down and out and can see no way out. My family and my pastor, my spiritual mentors, always are there with the encouragement that allows me to be resilient and to bounce back and to refocus myself. And I try to, pass that on to others who I encounter who are going through things and think that it's just the end, no way out. I encourage them and let them know that there's always a way out. You can bounce back from this. You can overcome this. You're not the first to have encountered this type of situation. If others can do it, you can do it. You're just as good as the next person. You're just as resilient as the next person. Just stay focused, do what you needs to be done, and that helps.
It definitely helps.
I think it's a combination of things, right? I think it's having and maintaining a good support system that can be made up of paid supports, people like psychiatrists, if need be, psychologists, things of that nature, right? Counselors, therapists, like that. So paid supports. And then the other side of that support are just, that natural support, friends and family. So there's that one piece. I think it's pieces, right? So I think is having a support system, having good coping skills, accepting and acknowledging, that, I am not perfect, right? I am a human. I make mistakes. I am flawed, but this is how I'm living my life, right? I think the other side of that also is, medication, right? If a person needs medication. So I think it's pieces, right? And some of them you may use more than others. And some you may, not need at all. So I kind of feel like it's pieces.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I like that because resiliency is not the same for everyone. Our path to resiliency is different according to our hurts, hangups, and habits, right? And we also need to understand that our hurts, hangups, and habits don't define us. If anything, they've helped refine us, right? And that I've got a couple chats coming in here. Close friends, self-care, mindfulness, my family, plan to do for when it or if it happens, baby steps towards a longer journey. Family, my recovery community, sponsors, priests, family, friends, and clients have all helped me to develop tools to help me deal with life in life's terms. We will never get over hurt. We will always remember the pain. We learn how to cope and work through the pain and move forward. Support groups, mentors, faith-based community, surrounding yourself with positive energy. Those are all very important. And it is very important to understand that we all have those pieces, right? None of us are perfect. We've all had to build resiliency. And it's really important that we don't say, what have you done? But we say, what's happened to you? Right? Because most of us have to build resiliency due to a trauma or something that we have been faced with or that we've had to deal with. Turn your pain into a purpose. Very good. Everybody is a teacher. Some people yes.
I also think that it's a reflection of how did you make it through? How did you manage when XYZ happened last year, last month, last week, 5 years ago? Like, how did you manage, right? When XYZ happened, you did one thing, two things, five things. Like, what were those action steps that you took to make it through, right? And I think that's another big thing that builds resilience, kind of reflecting back when, I wasn't able to pay my water bill. Okay, what did I do? Did I contact an agency to assist me? Did I borrow water, literally borrow water from your neighbor? This happened to someone that I know. They literally they had water from their neighbor, and then they took showers, at their house until they were able to get money to turn their water back on. So that was just something true that had happened to a friend of mine. But I mean, I think it's reflecting back on, okay, how did I manage? What did I do? That's why I think that journaling is huge, because then you can go back and you can reflect on, okay, this is what happened 5 years ago. Okay, did I have any role to play in that? Yes or no? You can ask all of those questions, right? You can kind of dissect that journal from, last week, last month, whatever the case may be, when there was an issue. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Journaling is huge for a lot of people. Some people, not everything works for or works for them, and that's okay as well, right? But one thing that we have to do is we have to also recognize that when we're feeling a certain way ourselves, we can't expect others to go, oh, Alizar's just going through some hurts, hangups, and habits, right? I might not know that. I can't expect, as an individual, that Alizar, Amber, anybody else here on this call is going to know that. So I have to be open to say, you know what, Amber, do you have a second to chit chat? I really went through a couple things lately, or some of these things have really been come up lately, and I really need someone that I can talk to, right? It's important to understand that those pieces need to be done as well, because as much as I hate to say this, life does happen. Things do get very busy, and it's not anyone else's responsibility to notice my hurts, hangups, and habits and to help me overcome them unless I ask and reach out for help. And that's where it's important to understand, is that from an individual's perspective, who do you feel like you can trust, that you can turn to, and that's going to be that support system for you. And oftentimes people don't understand or know who that's going to be. So
Absolutely.
as a CHW, helping folks to understand, it can be a pastor, it can be a friend, it can be your CHW, it can be a multitude of people.
I also think that it's a part of being vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
Because I have a really close friend that I talk to every single day, and we'll start off on one subject and then we'll go 15 other subjects, and then we may come back to that first original subject, but we talk every day and we have some very great conversations. And one of our conversations that we had was, about people being vulnerable and how we hide pieces of ourselves, right? Because I don't want someone to see, that I'm not able to do, or I'm not able to, fill in the space, right? And I had given him this example one time, and I said, the next time you go to Myers and you check out, and the lady or man says, how was your experience shopping today? And you just have a meltdown. They will not make eye contact with you, and they're hoping that you give the standard, oh, everything's well. I got all my groceries, everything's well. What is that? Is that me? Oh, that was weird. But yeah, so we talk about that all the time, about hiding ourselves and being vulnerable. But I also think too that it's also about the comfort level of the individual that they're talking to. So if someone's coming in to meet with me and I'm being shady or perceived to be shady, right, then that person isn't going to want to be vulnerable. So I also feel like there's a little bit of that on us as well, right, as CHWs, making sure that that person, feels confident enough to want to be vulnerable and talk and share and say these are the things that they may or may not be going through.
Absolutely. And it's part of the CHW's responsibility as well, is to ask those open-ended questions appropriately to kind of get that idea of the comfort level of the individuals that we're working with. But we also have to understand as well that not everyone is going to be in a situation where, when they do have those conversations, the reciprocal party, the recipient is not going to always feel comfortable with those very tough conversations. Patricia Kenny, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to just step back a few comments ago, just to expound on what I heard one participant say about journaling. And that's a very good That's a very good thing to do. That's important for resiliency. I have what I call my "This Too Shall Pass" journal, and I do just what she suggested. Just write things down as they happen. Go back and look at it a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, and see that passed away. You thought you wasn't going to overcome it, but you did. This too shall pass. And that's my "This Too Shall Pass" journal.
And one final thought from myself is I also want you to make sure that you understand your own triggers. Triggers to hurts, habits, and hangups is a huge piece to understanding and recognizing what's going to trigger the feelings of or from your hurts, habits, and hangups. That's the same thing with the client that they face or the patient. So without further ado, I am completely finished with my presentation. Rebecca, it is back to you. Please take it away. You are
She's
muted.
muted.
Goodness, I am. Thanks, Andrea. I just want to thank everybody for being here. This is the last Learning Collaborative of 2022. I hope you guys had a wonderful 2022. I hope you're looking forward to a great 2023. I know I am. I feel like the year flew by, but I'm excited to see what next year has in store for our RCHWN as well as all of our CHW members and celebrating all of your CHW stories. Thank you again, Andrea, for a great presentation.
Hope to see you all in the Gulf Coast. Woo-hoo.
Woo-hoo. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Andrea. Awesome
Yeah.
as ever.
Of course, hon. See you later. Have a great day, everybody. Have a
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
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 Everybody.